5 People Who Beat the System Part 4. This guy had to send in a picture of him in a suit and tie to his work, but he doesn't own one, so he photoshopped his face on somebody else's. A mayor in Brazil prohibited bar owners from setting tables on the sidewalk, so their solution was to put them on the back of a truck. At a camp, all the kids had to write a letter home before they ate. So this kid just wrote, "I was forced to write this to eat." The students in this class had to pick a Marvel character, then write a resume and cover letter pretending to be them. So this student chose to do Groot, and since the only thing he says is "I am Groot," that's what he put for everything. Before I show you the smartest kid, I found an app that lets you prank your friends and family by changing their text messages. Just press the button on my profile to get it. This boy's mom put a lock on the drawer, so when he's misbehaving, she puts his electronics in it. But she never knew that the boy could take out the top drawer to get to the bottom one. The most shocking moments caught on live streams. This Twitch streamer who goes by Mr. Big got the police called on him for a noise complaint. But when the police came to his door, he refused to give them any information, so he was arrested. It was all captured on his live stream, but that wasn't even the most crazy part. A few minutes later, one of his neighbors comes in and starts stealing things from him. This is the luckiest man alive. Frain Selleck was riding a train when it went off the tracks into a river. 17 passengers died, but he was able to swim to shore with nothing but a broken arm. The next year when he was on a plane, a door detached from the aircraft and it crashed. 19 people died, but Selleck was found in a haystack with a few bruises. In 1996, he was on a bus when it drove into a river. 4 people died, but again, he survived. In 1970, his car's fuel tank exploded on the highway. In 1973, his fuel tank leaked and his car caught on fire. Fast forward to 1995 and he was in another bus crash. The next year when he was driving, a truck came barreling towards him. He jumped out of his vehicle and watched it explode. Things you're doing wrong and didn't know. Deodorant should actually be applied at night and not in the morning. Since you produce less sweat at night, your armpits will be able to absorb more of the active ingredients, allowing it to work for approximately 24 hours. The correct way to peel a banana is to start from the bottom and not the top. Doing it this way, it's easier to peel and it also helps you remove those white strips of banana that get stuck to it. You don't need to fill your entire toothbrush with toothpaste. Just covering a third of the toothbrush is plenty. If you want your sticky notes to stick properly, you should peel them from the sides. Finally, the right way to cover an ice cream container after opening it is by placing wax paper or plastic wrap against the surface of the ice cream before closing it, because doing this prevents it from losing its creaminess. 5 everyday things that prove our life is a lie. Mini carrots sold in supermarkets aren't really that size. They're cut to look like that and more noticeable to the eye. Hair doesn't grow thicker if you cut it or shave it. Many people think this because the tip that's left is blunt, which makes it appear to be thicker until it's finished growing. The taste of Coca-Cola changes when it's packaged in cans. The only container that it doesn't change taste is in glass, because it's chemically inert, which means that it doesn't affect the product. The gold medals in the Olympics aren't only made of gold. They're made of pure silver that's plated in gold, so they only actually contain about 1.34% of gold, which would be equivalent to 6 grams. Finally, for the longest time, people have been using bricks for their walls because it's sturdy, but nowadays companies can make anything look like brick walls. So if it looks like this, it may not be as sturdy as you think. The scariest booby traps in the world. Punji sticks were one of the most famous booby traps used in the Vietnam War. It was made out of bamboo sticks with a sharp point at the end, which were placed in deep holes that they camouflaged so nobody could see them. The goal is that the enemy would fall into the pit and the punchy sticks would pierce them. Cartridge traps, also known as toe poppers, were bullet cartridges that were placed inside a bamboo tube and a nail which they camouflaged into the ground with the tip protruding. When stepped on, the pressure of the bullet caused it to fall on the nail, igniting the primer and exploding. Finally, when the Germans were retreating from the cities of Europe, they made sure to place expensive works of art with explosives that would go off with the slightest movement. The trick was to leave the paintings slightly tilted so that when they were straightened, they would explode. This man got locked in a grocery store. Kevin Blackwood got locked in an Aldi's grocery store after it closed.
So I had to call 911 because the alarm is activated and I can't get out.
But it wasn't his fault, because the cashier closed the store 15 minutes early and didn't check to see if there was anyone else still in the store.
I just got locked in at Aldi and they don't close till like 9 o'clock.
It was probably one of the best places to be locked in because there's a ton of food.
I don't have to worry about starving to death because there's plenty of food.
But eventually the cops arrived and they unlocked the doors. This is a real scary McDonald's customer service story. A young girl who lived with her 3-year-old sister and her mother experienced a very frightening moment. One of her mother's cousins worked at a McDonald's near where they lived, so she often stays there after school while she waits for her mother to pick her up. One day while she was studying at McDonald's and taking care of her little sister who was playing in the playground, 2 strange-looking men walked in. One of them suddenly approached the girl and started asking her a bunch of questions, but she was really scared and didn't really answer them. A few minutes later, she looked out to see her sister, but she wasn't there. She quickly got up to look for her and realized that the other man was in the parking lot trying to get her sister into the car while she was kicking and screaming. The girl ran to her mom's cousin and told him to call 911, but the man who was taking her sister gave up when he saw several employees approaching him and left the girl on the ground. If she hadn't acted quickly, she may never have seen her sister again. Why North Korea is the hardest country to escape. Since Kim Jong-un took power in North Korea, it's become harder and harder to cross the North Korean border. When his father was in charge, the number of people who crossed the border was higher because the border security was less tight. They could simply bribe the local border control and they would let them pass into China. But when Kim Jong-un realized this, he decided to tighten the security. And now the border patrol can shoot anyone that tries to cross the border. He also had an electric barbed wire fence installed across the border. There's lots of escape routes, but they're all really dangerous. If anyone manages to reach China, they'll have to stay in hiding because if they're found by the authorities, they'll be sent back to North Korea where they'll be accused of being spies. So instead they have to reach a country where they won't be deported, which is Thailand. When they arrive in Thailand, they must turn themselves in to the authorities to be transferred to that country. It can take them between 2 to 6 months to complete this escape, but the people who decide to do it prefer to take the risk rather than continue living in North Korea. 5 Disney secrets you didn't know. If you look closely, some scenes from different Disney movies are quite similar. This is because the drawings were made by hand, and the animators only make a few changes to create a new scene. Lilo's voice belongs to the actress who played the role of Samara Morgan in the movie The Ring. Since Walt Disney wanted to spend most of his free time at Disneyland, he created a secret apartment on the 2nd floor of the fire station on Main Street, located on the famous avenue that leads to the park's Central Plaza. The name of the wizard in the movie Fantasia is Yensen, which is Disney in reverse. Simba means lion in the Swahili language, and Boo's real name is Mary because the person who plays her is called Mary Gibbs. Finally, Walt ordered to build a bunch of tunnels underneath the park to allow the actors to get from place to place without the public noticing so they wouldn't lose the magic of the place. Things you didn't know about Squid Game. The symbols on the soldiers' masks were inspired by the organization of ant colonies, therefore dividing them into a circle for the workers, a triangle for the soldiers, and a square for the people in charge. The phone number they used on the invitations card to the game belonged to a real business. When the series became popular, thousands of people started phoning that number and asking to join the game. So to solve this, Netflix had to edit the number. The players never realized that the games they would be playing were in front of their eyes the whole time. Each game was painted in order on the wall of the bedroom. The stairs that led the players to the game room and back were inspired by the artwork of a Dutch artist named MC Escher. They actually used 456 people to film the first game, since they didn't want to use a computer-generated image. Finally, the script for Squid Game was created in 2008, but was rejected by several producers before being accepted by Netflix 2 decades later. This boy said he got a pencil stuck in his ear, but it turned out to be something much worse. This boy went to the hospital with his grandma after saying he snapped the pencil in his ear. Apparently he was playing in it with his ear when it accidentally snapped off. While the doctor was trying to find something in his ear with a camera, he asked the boy to describe it, and the boy said it was just a small piece. The doctor wanted to remove it as soon as possible, because leaving it in his ear for too long could cause an infection or even death. But when the doctor was pulling it out, he realized the boy was lying about what was actually in his ear. Instead of pulling out part of a pencil, he pulled out a watch battery. The doctor also said he couldn't see his eardrum anymore because the battery made a hole in it. But luckily they regrow and it should be back to normal within 6 weeks. This dad told 911 that his baby choked on milk, but then they figured out what really happened. One day, this single mother asked her ex-husband if he could watch their child named Xavier while she went back to work for the first time since she had the baby. Her ex kept texting her all day about how annoying Xavier was being. She told him to just push through for the day and she would find a babysitter for next time. Then at 2:30 in the afternoon, she got another text from him saying that Xavier had stopped breathing because he had choked on milk and that they were going to the hospital. She then packed up from work and rushed to the hospital too. The doctors did a CT scan and found out that Xavier was bleeding from inside his brain. Then she was shocked when the police arrived to do interviews. That night, the father was arrested for first-degree child abuse. Xavier was in a coma for 2 weeks, and the doctors told his mom that he might be blind, he might not be able to move, and he might not be able to speak. 3 months later, he so far wasn't diagnosed with anything, but to try and prevent anything bad from happening in the future, his mom started taking him to a bunch of different therapists. Secret Places Hidden in Famous Locations Part 2. In the Statue of Liberty, there's a small room located inside the torch, but no one can enter it because that part was damaged by the Germans in 1916. And although it was prepared, they don't allow people in it as a safety precaution. Mount Rushmore is famous for the 4 sculpted faces of previous American presidents, but behind them is a secret vault. Inside are different historical documents, like the Declaration of Independence, the biography of the sculptor, and the history of the construction of the place, but no one can access them. Inside Big Ben, there's a hidden room by the bell tower, and although it's no longer in use, it used to be used as a prison for people who breached the code of conduct. The Tower of London is one of the most famous fortresses in the world and home to the yeoman warders. And underneath it there's a pub that you can only enter if you were invited by one of them. Game endings almost no one has ever seen. Number 1, Flappy Bird. This game was created in just 2 days by a Vietnamese developer, Dong Nguyen. It seemed impossible to reach the end of Flappy Bird, but eventually somebody finally did. When you reach 999 points, the bird meets Mario and then the game just ends. Number 2, Pac-Man. It was created in 1980 by the Japanese company Namco. After level 21, the game becomes increasingly difficult, making it impossible to win. And according to the developers, the game doesn't have an end because of that reason. However, after many hours of playing the game, the most hardcore fans reached the final level, where they discovered a software bug that not even the developers knew existed. On the screen, the left side of the maze looked normal, but on the right side you could see random letters, numbers, and symbols of various colors. But even with this bug, you could still pass the level, and the only thing that happens is it brings you back to the screen to play again from level 1. This story sounds fake, but it's 100% real. In 2013, Jim Stoffer's mother passed away from Alzheimer's at the age of 74. Doctors told Jim that the disease mutated in a way that they had never seen before, and asked if he was willing to donate her body for brain research. Jim decided to donate it to the Biological Resource Center in Phoenix, which removes body parts for scientific research, then cremates the rest and returns the ashes to the family members. Jim received his mother's ashes, but without specifying what was done to her body. A year later, the center was raided by the FBI after hearing accusations that they were selling the donated bodies for profit, and among them was Jim's mother, who was sold for $5,893. It turns out that the bodies were actually used for US military experiments, and according to investigations, Jim's mother's body was strapped to a chair that was then detonated by a bomb underneath it to understand the effects on a body when a vehicle is hit by an explosive device. Jim and others who were affected sued the center, and in 2019 they were awarded $58 million for the damage, with the center being no longer in operation. 5 animals that can live after death. Chickens can live without their heads as long as their brain stems aren't cut off, because most of their motor functions aren't controlled by the brain but by the brain stems. Salamanders have the ability to regenerate limbs and organs so they don't die. When they're old enough, they could regenerate again and again, even their brain, heart, and spinal cord. After a snake loses its head, it still has hours to live, so you better stay away from its head, because it can still inject you with its venom even after death. Flatworms can rebuild any part of its body after it's cut off. If they're cut in half, the head will rebuild the tail and vice versa, resulting in 2 flatworms. Cockroaches are resistant to radiation and are most likely to survive a nuclear attack. They can live after decapitation for a long time, but since they can't eat, they die of starvation. 1 in a million coincidences. This man was just walking when he randomly tapped a stranger's shoulder, which made him turn around and saved him from getting hit by the gate. While in an interview, this player used his hand to get a fly away from his face, but at the same time the lights went off behind him. This tree fell over at night, and now they're the luckiest person this morning. This person bought a sandwich from a vending machine, but it got stuck. So they ordered a drink above it to knock it down, but it also got stuck. Now before I show you an even crazier one, I found this app that lets you remove anything from your photos, and I mean anything. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Finally, this person's drink got stuck, so they ordered another one above it to knock it down, but it ended up hitting another one as well, so they got 3. 3 tricks Walmart doesn't want you to know. Have you ever been at the store and someone asks you if you want to try a free sample or a new product? Well, a scientist said when you take the free sample, it makes your brain think it's dinner time, making you want to buy it. They sometimes put items on sale to make you think like you're getting a better deal, when in reality they put the sale price as what they would normally sell it for as retail. You may think they just throw products on the shelves randomly, but they actually do it strategically. The top shelf has smaller brands, regional brands, and gourmet brands. They put them there to give tone and texture to the shelf, to help the store stand out from its competitors. The 2 shelves below are where they put the top selling brand, because it's at the customer's eye level, giving them a higher chance of buying it. Below that are the kids shelves, where they usually place child appealing items, making the kids want to ask their parents if they could buy it. And finally, on the very bottom, they have the local brands and bulk items. Most uncomfortable products ever designed. Number 1, this child car seat. In order to help parents keep their children quiet in car seats, a designer came up with the idea to paint Disney's Princess Cinderella on it. It looks good when there's a small child sitting in it, but as they get older, you'll have to adjust the headrest, and to do that, you have to stretch Cinderella's neck. Number 2, these Kleenex tissues. We all know the typical Spider-Man pose, and someone decided to put that on a Kleenex box, and whoever designed it didn't think it through, because they put the image in a way where it looks like you're pulling tissues from Spider-Man's bum. Number 3, Wonder Woman scissors. The scissors have a good design when they're closed, but when open, it looks like you're splitting Wonder Woman in two. And finally, number 4, the red ribbon. In a children's hospital, they painted a pathway that's supposed to look like a red ribbon, but instead it looked like a path left by someone dragging a bloody body. This man went to jail for stealing $1. James Verone went into the RBC bank without a gun and handed the bank teller a note that said this:
"This is a bank robbery. Please only give me $1.
Then he told her he was gonna go wait on the chair for the police to show up, which is what he did. He chose to steal $1 because he wanted them to know he wasn't doing it for the money. But you may be thinking, then why would he want to arrest himself? Well, the reason is because he has no medical insurance. He has a growth on his chest, 2 ruptured discs in his back, and a problem with his left foot. And he said he thought the most logical thing to do was go to jail so he could get medical care and a place to sleep.